Welcome to the Healthier Tech Podcast, the show about building a healthier relationship with modern technology. Now, here are your hosts, R. Blank and Stephanie Warner.
Erica Ziel is a functional diagnostic nutrition practitioner, board-certified holistic health coach, personal trainer and Pilates instructor, deep core and pre-postnatal exercise specialist, and a mom of three. Erica is the founder and creator of Core Athletica, the core rehab program, Knocked Up fitness brand, pre-postnatal exercise specialist course, and host of the Core Connections podcast, which is an amazing podcast. Erica morphed her education with her constant research and a hands-on approach to teaching female clients. Erica is passionate about education surrounding wellness and taking a holistic approach to healing our bodies. She believes that anything you want to improve about your health and life, you can. So let's welcome Erica to the Healthier Tech Podcast. Hi, Erica.
Hey, Erica.
Hi, Art. Thanks for having me on, you guys.
It's great to see you again.
You too.
I was just listening earlier today to the episode of Core Connections where we chatted, and it brought back a lot of nice memories. So it's great to see you again.
Yeah, you too.
So I'm sorry, but I have questions I want to ask you.
Yeah.
But I love the name, the Knocked Up fitness brand. Why don't you tell me
how that became?
Yeah, that's bold.
So oh my gosh, it's brings me back a couple of years. So the idea actually came about when I think my son, who is now 13, almost 14, he was a baby, and I was in this stage of my life where I was really wanting to specialize working with, a certain niche, right? And I had always loved working with pregnant moms. I even worked with pregnant moms back when I was in college, way before I was even planning to be a mom myself. And I did a ton of research actually about like exercise, during pregnancy and things like that, 20 years ago in college. And I was just always fascinated by it. And so I don't know, I was in a small entrepreneur group, and we were kind of kicking around ideas, and the whole idea of like Knocked Up like kind of kept coming up. We're like, why don't we just go with like Knocked Up Fitness? And so it actually just started like as a blog, and I didn't know actually what I was going to do with it or where I was going with it. I've always been that person, even when I was training clients one-on-one, teaching small groups, stuff like that. I've always had that something else I'm always working on. I just am like, Erica, why can't you just chill out, right? But I just can't. I'm like, I know I've always got more to offer. And then when I got pregnant with my my youngest, I was like, you know what? Let's create DVDs, because I really saw a need for, especially core training, the way that women were taught how to do core training during pregnancy, and they were still doing, crunches on the big exercise balls. And I was like, oh my gosh, it was like nails on a chalkboard to me, because all I could think about is how bad it was for her pelvic floor and her back and her abdominals, potentially creating diastasis recti, things like that. So that was then kind of like the next piece that then kind of like just led from that DVD when I was pregnant with my third to then creating more DVDs, writing a book all about prenatal exercise, and then eventually creating a membership, which now I do coaching on, and kind of do a bigger aspect of pregnancy, not just fitness, but it's really a wellness brand is how I look at it, with a big focus on movement, because there is so much healing and teaching that a woman can do for her body, help her prepare for motherhood, help her prepare for birth, for postpartum recovery by doing the right techniques during pregnancy. I talk a lot about pelvic floor and helping women and moms just not have to suffer from all the aches and pains and dysfunction that so many women do. And they don't even realize that there's like, oh, I could do something about it. I'm like, yes, you can.
And there's a lot to unpack there, and I want to ask you about a lot of it. But you described it as a wellness brand, and I was clicking through your website, and I saw some really interesting content that I want to ask you about. Which if you're going to call it a wellness brand, what does wellness actually what does it mean?
So because I'm always talking about, especially with movement, let's start with that, like how everything in the body is connected. So we can talk about, for example, back pain, right? A lot of pregnant women and moms are just like, oh, well, back pain just a part of pregnancy or a part of being a mom, right? And I'm like, no, but it doesn't need to be, because I don't have back pain. My clients don't have back pain. I teach people how to not have back pain. And I'm always teaching women, like, look, like, it's not your back that's necessarily why you have back pain. We have to look at your entire body. So we look at all these different facets: movement, breathing, pelvic floor function, what's your pelvis doing when you squat? Like, are you still drawing your belly to spine, right? So when I then kind of branch out even bigger and talk about wellness, well, what you eat matters, right? Digestion matters a lot, especially with pain, with inflammation, as we all know. Your sleep matters. I always am telling everybody, like, look, like, you cannot out diet or out supplement sleep. I'm sorry. You just cannot do that. And then our mindset. I am a huge, huge component or fan of always telling all my clients, all my students, like, look, like, you can go through and do the movements, and that's great, and you're going to get results. But I encourage you to go through it with a bigger aspirations, like really visualizing what you want for your body, what you want for your life, and visualizing your body getting stronger and healthier. Because we even know through research, right, that just the power of visualization, you can get stronger. So then if you're actually doing the right movement techniques, like, it can transform your life. So that, to me, is wellness, because it's a lifestyle. It's not, it's not just movement. And I do work with a lot of women that find me, and all they want to do, they're like, Eric, I just want to strengthen my abs. And I'm like, that's great and all, but you can't really do that. Like, they'll be like, I don't care. I don't want to learn any of this stuff you talk about with my pelvic floor. My pelvic floor is fine. And I'm like, but you can't properly strengthen your, quote, abs without understanding what's going on with your pelvic floor. And honestly, that goes for men too, but we don't talk about that. That's a whole other conversation. But, so it's really starting. I love to open up women's minds that, look, there's so much more to your life and your health. And when we start to learn to put the pieces together, it not only can change how you feel physically, but how you feel energetically and emotionally. And it all ties in together. You can't just piece them. It's just like, you can't just strengthen one part of your body. It's that way with your entire life, really.
Do you find that the work that you do with your clients on movement, that I'm trying to figure out how to ask this, but that it's just something that they do when they're exercising, or is it something that sort of permeates the rest of their? Because you're supposed to be moving, like, all the time, not just the hour you're at the gym, right? So does the movement work kind of change the way they move through life?
That is my goal. Yes. And I always open up with that, especially with my core rehab students, as I say, which is what I work with women before pregnancy or after having babies, or women who don't have any kids. But they're like, maybe I've got back pain or the pelvic floor, things like that. And I'm always telling them, like, look, like, I want you to do your movement practice as many days of the week as you can, even if it's only 10 or 15 minutes. We know that's beneficial. And I've seen that because I've worked with thousands of women. But I also am telling them, look, you're standing, you're sitting, you're wrangling little children, or you're carrying different things, right? Whatever it is, throughout the rest of your day. And those movements matter, and you will get better results when you take the education that I'm teaching and you apply it to the rest of your days. And that's also where, like, the visualization piece I was saying, because I get a lot of women that are like, I just want to do my movement practice, check it off my list, and move on with my day. And I'm like, you can do that and you can get results, but I'm here to help you get even better results. So let's take what we're learning in our movement practice, our exercise, and let's apply it to the rest of our life. Because ultimately, like you said, we are moving. Even just sitting here, I can choose to sit here and sit tall and be open through my chest and be able to breathe, or I can be like super rounded and like, and it's like, that's not good for my energy, my nervous system, my back, or my pelvic floor, right?
Yeah. So I love the work that you're doing, and I absolutely love your focus on helping women during pregnancy and getting ready for getting ready for birth and having children. I feel like, and you kind of touched on this a little bit, a lot of women, we just kind of, expect and accept that you're going to have all of these different things, uncomfortable situations as you're pregnant. And I love that you've really honed into this niche and are helping so many women. And I wonder what kind of triggered that passion and broadly even your passion for health and fitness.
So actually it goes way back to when I was a kid, because I had knee pain that started when I was 5. And
Oh, wow.
by the
Ooh.
time I was 17, yeah, I grew up taking way too much Motrin, which is something I strive for my own family and myself now, like I
Yeah.
don't take that stuff unless like it is absolutely
What causes
necessary.
knee pain at such a young age?
So they kept saying it was growing pains, right? And I was done growing by like 14. I mean,
Okay.
I grew up in the Midwest, small town, right? And mom would take me to the doctor. My parents tried for sure, but again, it's you don't know what you don't know, right?
Hmm.
And finally at 17, when I was still having knee pain and I was like, I wanted to be an athlete and I was just injured every season and in pain, right? I wore the little tendonitis strap around my knee, which never did anything, always got adjustments, it was just like managing it. And we go to the Mayo Clinic, which is just, north of where I grew up, a couple hours. And it was like the most like, I don't know, it was almost like dumb, right? Like, so I meet with this physical therapist there and they're like, well, yeah, you need to strengthen your legs. I was like, you're kidding me, right? Like, I just need to go in the weight room and start strengthening my legs. Okay, I can do that. So that's what I started doing. So I started doing Olympic lifting when I was 17 in high school. Luckily for me, we had an amazing strength and conditioning coach at the time. So he was really big on form. And so I started with an awesome foundation of strengthening my body. And that's what got me interested in lifting weights.
And it
Um,
worked,
and
I'm assuming.
so then I studied exercise science. So it took me till I was 21 to be pain free, but I got to experience that movement can be really healing for your body. And so that for me, like right out the gate with movement and exercise was, wow, there's a lot you can do to heal the body, prevent injury, right? All that kind of stuff. So that was my mindset right out the gate. And I've not had pain in my knees since. And so that for me, I've always had that perspective, a little bit different, I think, from, I didn't necessarily go the route of, how you can just, all the periodization and all that stuff with exercise that I learned and all, my training, which is great and everything. And there's a time and a place for that. But I have always looked at movement of how can this prevent injury for someone? How can this help someone who has back pain or knee pain or hip pain? And I've really prided myself in getting my clients, my students out of pain. And I'm notorious for doing that. And then I found Pilates, the end of college, moved to California, dove in deep. It was like a whole other degree. And then of course, along the way, right, was working with pregnant women and just really started, doing the same with them and being like, look, like when we understand how to strengthen the deep core, which was an evolution over the years, because obviously what I was doing 20 years ago was a little bit more old school training, but I also still had a different perspective because I was going about it as like a, getting rid of pain prevention. But then I started discovering more about the pelvic floor and fascia, which were two things I did not learn about at university. And once I started understanding really about the pelvic floor, the deep core, like looking outside the box of fitness is actually what taught me the most about fitness. And so then, that just started transforming, just one thing after the other, and then working with clients, experimenting with movement, experimenting with breath work, and really started to see like my ladies that I would work with, for pregnancy, whether I worked with her before or she came to me during, that her recoveries were so amazing. She had very little pain during pregnancy. I'd had so many women that had massive back pain before she got pregnant. Then she'd find me when she was pregnant. We'd get rid of the back pain during pregnancy, which is like unheard of, right? That you just don't hear of women who have crazy back pain for most of their life and all of a sudden it goes away with pregnancy. No, but it's because of how she's moving and how she's breathing. And, we can really combat a lot of the common postural shifts that take place during pregnancy. And the thing is, if we don't do that, that's where a lot of dysfunction starts for moms. Even if she can suck it up and push it through till she's in her 50s or her 60s, a lot of it actually goes back to those years of having babies because of all those shifts that's taking place in in her body, but we can really minimize that. And then when she knows how to breathe and how to move and how to strengthen her core correctly, and she gets back to doing that soon postpartum and really I would say like rehabilitates her body, which is really what we need to do postpartum. Women need to stop being like, I want my body back. I mean, you can have that, that's fine to a point, but I'm always like last night, we just had a coaching call that I always do coaching calls in my programs because they're so beneficial, right? And I'm always telling my postpartum moms, and they're like, okay, I'm itching to go running again. And I'm like 12 weeks postpartum. And I'm like, that's great. And I know you want to, but I'm going to tell you, please keep following the program, keep doing your assignments every day, because that's going to get you there. And we're going to prevent injury. We're going to prevent pelvic floor dysfunction, prevent your organs sliding out, right? Like all these things that happen that women don't realize can really happen to them until it does happen to them, or they don't realize like, oh, I don't have to have all this back pain. And I'm not saying we can prevent it 100%, because sometimes some of my pregnant moms, we are just managing it, because the other piece of this is that no one holds a baby perfectly square in their body and their pelvis. So sometimes the way baby is positioned can cause twisting of the pelvis, and we sometimes can't untwist a pelvis during pregnancy, because for baby to be, say, especially if mom's like 39 weeks pregnant and baby's down in the birth canal and she's ready to go into labor any day, if we're to adjust that pelvis, it could actually pop baby up out of the birth canal, which I actually had that experience with my third, because my pelvis twisted and I'd have this annoying SI thing, and I was doing everything to manage it. It was manageable. It was fine. And I remember going for acupuncture, and because she was late. She was very late. My third child must have heard all the chaos and she didn't want to come into the world. And so I went for acupuncture, right, to help stimulate labor. And she was also a chiropractor. So she was like, hey, I can help you with that SI pain. And of course, at the time I was like, great. Well, I go back to my doctor a couple of days later. She's like, where'd your baby go? What do you mean? She's still in there. She hasn't come out. She's like, well, when I saw you a week ago, she was where she needed to be in your birth canal. And I was like, oh, she must have popped her up. So anyway, I did all the stuff that I teach today to help moms.
It's still a super disturbing question.
It was. Yeah, I know, right?
That wasn't what I was expecting you to say.
Yeah, I know, right? But then the crazy thing so I did all the stuff that I teach to like, encourage baby back down in birth canal. And I felt her shift because I felt my pelvis go, and I was like, stood back up, and there was my SI stuff again. And I was like, okay, well, it was a good learning lesson for me to then, we all learn from our own experiences. I learned from a lot of my clients' experiences, and to be like, look, I always tell my moms, like, don't go get an adjustment in those last couple of weeks, especially if baby's where we want baby to be, because we don't want to have a cesarean unless we absolutely have to, unless that's a plan, right? Do you know what I mean?
Right.
So anyway, that's a whole other kind of, I may have gone.
But yeah, I'm really curious. I think we all kind of know what the pelvic floor is. And of course, women who have babies, we, hear about it, of course, but what does that mean in your work? Like what exactly are you doing, and what are you referring to in a little more detail?
Yeah, no, it's a great question, because I realize a lot of women don't really even understand what their pelvic floor is.
Right. You hear the word,
and
but
actually,
what does that actually mean?
A fair number of men don't understand that.
Okay, well, I'll explain it.
That's fair.
So,
that's fair.
Yeah.
In the world of women, we many times think of our pelvic floor as doing Kegels to strengthen our pelvic floor, right? I actually don't like women doing Kegels, just side note, because I see that it causes an imbalance in strength in the pelvic floor. Here's why. So the pelvic floor, like if you're sitting right now, men can do this too. So if you're sitting right up on your pelvis, and we think from our pubic bone on the front of our pelvis to our tailbone, and then our sits bones to our sits bones. So if you're kind of rocking on your pelvis, all of that is part of your pelvic floor. There's all these different muscles that make up your pelvic floor. It is the base of your pelvis. It is the base of your
It's kind of like your butt
underneath your glute muscles.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah. And here's the thing too, if you go to activate your pelvic floor and you're trying to just strengthen your pelvic floor and you squeeze your glutes, you're cheating. And it's very common. I see that a lot. So we actually need to learn one of the easiest ways to start to find your pelvic floor is to release and relax through your pelvis and your pelvic floor. And that's actually really hard for a lot of people to do. But when we can let go, because we hold a lot of tension, women in particular hold a ton of tension in our pelvis. And if you've had a traumatic birth, even if it wasn't a really traumatic birth, but maybe it didn't go as planned, I find women hold on to that stuff. And we can hold on to other things too, but that's just an example. And so sometimes even just learning to let go through the pelvis, the pelvic floor, the lower belly can actually help us to discover our pelvic floor. And I will just tell you,
why is the pelvic floor seem to be a concept only relating in practice to women's health and not to universal
that's a
health?
really good question, R, and I don't have the answer for you other than it is finally coming up in conversation more for postpartum health. I am hearing it. I'm hearing more of that. I mean, I've been talking about the pelvic floor for 15 years, and finally in the last couple, I'm hearing a lot more about it from other avenues, right? Why is it not talked about for men? I don't know, because it does matter. Okay. So like for women in particular, it matters more in the sense, right? Because we can have more dysfunction. We can have prolapsing that happens, right? You get the incontinence, right? The leaking of the pee in your pants, right? You can even get fecal incontinence, which is that is actually what men can tend to have a problem with, but usually it's later on in life that can happen. And honestly, men should care and should know about this as well, because for optimal core function, we need to understand what's going on with our pelvic floor. And so I'll see with men, not to get too off topic here, but with men in particular, right? They've done a lot of crunches over the years, and men can get like inguinal hernias and other hernias of their belly. And if we aren't connected through our entire core, well, we're not as fascially strong as we really should be, which if we're more fascially strong, we're preventing those hernias. Versus if we're just muscularly strong, we can have a lot of tension in the tissue, and we're not as like fluid with our movement and our connections, if that makes a little sense.
Yeah. So I know that a lot of your messaging is based in the idea that back pain is not always, or is actually possibly even rarely caused by the back itself. And I'm wondering if this pelvic floor information that you're sharing is directly tied to your approach to back pain.
It is, yes. So absolutely, whether I'm working with a woman or a man, it's the same idea, because here's the deal. Why does our back hurt? Many times it's because it starts to spasm, or it's taking over because it doesn't have enough support in other areas of the body, right? Or someone's tucking their pelvis a lot or doing too many crunches, and they're just putting so much pressure in the back. And the way the body starts to compensate if it starts to feel pain is it starts to grab and get grippy. And the more we get grabby, grippy muscles of our back, well, that can cause back pain. It can cause twisting of the spine. And then before you know it, you're like, the pelvic floor is not even working. Hip flexors are taking over. You're really tight in your neck. It's like all the wrong areas are taking over, and all the right areas, like our hamstrings, the underside of our glutes, our pelvic floor, our lower belly, our mid back, are not doing the work. It's like the zigzags of the body.
It's a freeloader effect. Yeah, certain muscles.
The body will cheat. Yeah, and the body will cheat. And we have to teach the body how not to cheat. And so if you don't have the right amount of strength, and it's not just having a strong abs, people can have too tight of abs, and that can cause other issues too. And that's where the world of talking about fascia, I teach a lot of fascial strengthening. And when I say that, what I mean by that is because fascia wraps around all of our organs. It wraps around all of our muscles, every single muscle spindle, our nerves, all of that, right? So it really connects everything in our body together. So if we are approaching our movement with a more fascially fluid, strengthening perspective, we will then also become more muscularly strong. But if we are just focused on strengthening our muscles, yeah, we're going to become a little more fascially strong, but because the fascia kind of is overarching of all of our muscles. Does that make a little sense? So
I'm a little confused on what fascia is exactly. So okay. I'm imagining like a connective tissue, but you're saying it's something that wraps our.
It is. Okay. Yeah, it is. It is your connective tissue. Absolutely. but it wraps around everything in your body, essentially, right? And so it really is what connects. And so example, like the back pain, for example. So say you've got, your right SI is really tight. Well, where opposite, likely the left hip flexor is going to take over and be tight too. So we've got these counter poles that are causing then pain. And so many people want to stretch all the time. But the problem is if we just stretch our tissue, it doesn't feel supported. This is why strengthening the body in the right ways and always focus on creating space. Fascia likes to be active and lengthened. And then what you're doing is you're telling that fascia to become stronger in a lengthened position. Does that make a little sense?
Yeah, it does.
Okay.
And it makes me wonder too, with, are you seeing, I guess, how do I want to ask this? Are you seeing an impact on, on the clients that you're working with, based on their use of their posture and use of technology? So I'm sitting here thinking about, I'm sitting in front of my computer when I'm looking down at my phone, and how that affects my posture. And I'm wondering, have you seen that impact?
Oh
And
my
also
goodness.
posture,
Yes.
and how does that affect the pelvic floor also?
Mhm. Oh
Or if
yeah.
it does.
How much more time do we have?
Yeah. No, this is great. This is the meat. Yeah.
This,
So yeah, no, absolutely. Oh my gosh. I talk about this a lot actually, because I'm always telling people like, look, like get a standing desk, or so like right now I'm sitting on a flat stool. So many times I think, well, we got to have the comfy chair or whatever. And it's like, no. Do not use chairs with backs because people cheat and lean into them. Right. And then we get the
Mhm.
rounded posture. The standing desks are great. I also am not a fan of like standing all day because your body will cheat. You want to change up your position. So we sit for a while, we're sitting tall, opening our chest, right? Lightly lifting up through our body. So again, our fascial system is on a little bit. So we are training our body to be stronger in a lengthened position. But if we are sitting and rounded forward a lot on our phones, so the deal is fascia forms the way that our body moves. So when you see people as they get older, they're kyphotic, they're rounded forward, they're tight in that way, we can undo a lot of that by just simply working on improving their movement habits during their day. We kind of talked about that at the beginning, right? The movement we're doing, how is that relating to the rest of your day? Well, all the work we're doing on the computers, being on our phones, it matters. And it's starting younger and younger and younger. Like I get on my kids because they start with computers so young, and I have to remind them, I'm like, look, and they don't have teachers anymore saying sit up straight. Like we used to get told that. They do not say that anymore in school. So those of you parents who are listening, even if your kids are really little, or even if you don't have kids yet, when you do, when they're in that grade school age or older, starting to be on computers and stuff, you got to be on them and be like, look, you have to have tall posture. I see girls at such middle school age starting to have horrible posture. And all I can think is, oh my gosh, if their back does not already hurt and their neck doesn't already hurt, which a lot of them it already does, I'm like, they're going to have some massive pain in a
Well,
pretty short period of time.
you're gonna have a steady stream of clients for the rest
I am
of your
going to have
career
a steady
at
stream
this.
of clients. Yes.
Do you when you're working with your clients, do you try to get them to be a little more perhaps conscious of their use of tech in particular? Like,
Yes.
and maybe it's more than this, but I'm thinking particularly, phones, because of
Yes.
what that the type of behaviors
Well,
that
I think,
encourages.
yeah, I'm always so funny because I know some people will find me, by being on technology or on Instagram or whatever, which is awesome. And everything happens for a reason. And then sometimes I'm the person that has to teach them and remind them, like, look, what are you doing? Or like when you're on social media, when you're on your phone, is it purposeful? And then we need to get off, right? Because I work with a lot of moms who are really busy, don't have a lot of time. And I'm like, okay, if you're telling me you don't even have 10, 15, 20 minutes to move your body every day, how much time are you on your phone? That is always my first question.
Oh, that's a good
Because I'm
one.
like, trade your scrolling time that is getting you nowhere and actually maybe moving you backwards sometimes in life and maybe getting you worked up. Like put it away, or put a 5-minute alarm, whatever it is, look up what you need to look up. Cause I know I got my groups on Facebook. I want to, check things out and stuff like that too. And I even have to remind myself, look, like, get off of it now. Like, you're done. Go on and be productive with your day. Yeah, it really, like, there can be really good tech out there, but at the end of the day, I think it comes down to us. We have to be so aware of it, because otherwise it sucks us in. And then before you know it, you're like, wow, I didn't get my actual things on my list that I needed to get done today. That's making me healthier and making me a better human being.
Sorry. And then
Yeah,
you
no, no,
have
you jump in.
the pain, and
Oh,
the
yeah.
neck problems and the back
Oh,
problems as well. So it,
yeah.
Yeah,
And
so
the
I was actually
neck,
gonna,
like,
so
mhm.
other than putting down your phone, what would be, 1, 2, or 3 tips that people, our listeners, could work on right now to improve their
Yeah.
posture?
So some postural tips are, when you're standing, don't lock your knees, because if you lock your knees, you're going all into your back and your muscles are not getting stronger. I see Stephanie looking and I'm like,
oh, I
a
haven't heard
lot of
that
women,
before.
a
That's a good
lot of
one.
women lock their
Oh,
knees. And if you do it and you're standing, just try it. Lock your knees and then just soften them. You're not like bending them. They're just
wow.
not
Huh.
locked. All of a sudden, you'll be able to feel your pelvic floor a little bit more in time, and your low back,
Huh.
the pressure goes out of the low back. A next one is stop clenching your glutes and tucking your butt, because all that does is create too much pressure for the pelvic floor. Side note, most women have too tight of a pelvic floor, and that causes actually the pelvic floor dysfunction and back pain. So we need to let go of those glutes. Another one is to lengthen tall. And I'm like, this is probably a favorite cue of my clients. Everyone's like, oh, I love that one. Just like, if you can just remember to just lengthen up all the way through the top of your head, you just like grow a little bit taller, you turn your deep core on a little bit, you can activate your pelvic floor. And again, it's light. And that's the thing people think is like, oh, I gotta feel my core working like I'm doing 1,000 crunches. And I'm like, no, no, no. When you're actually properly activating your deep core, it's so gentle, it's so light. And so when we can just do that light little lift all the way through the top of our head through our day, whether we're sitting, standing, walking, doesn't matter, doing squats, doesn't matter. We're going to start to have more space between our bones, which our body loves, our nerves love, and we can start to get stronger and our posture can start to improve. And the last one I would say is stop jamming your shoulders back and down. Oh, I know everyone's like, wait,
Oh,
what?
jeez.
I
Right?
try to do
Everything you're
this.
saying is making me so
I know.
self-conscious during this interview. It's like, oh my,
So here's
am I
the
sitting
reason.
right? Wait, what?
Here's the reason. And it's not about having perfect posture all the time. It's just trying to continue to improve and bring more awareness. And you can't improve it if you're not even aware of it, right? The thing with the jamming the shoulders down and back is, if I'll show it on video here quick, you guys, I'll just turn to the side with the neck. So a lot of people, but I'll try to explain it here too. A
Yeah.
lot of people have a forward head, right? And kind of down, and we're like locked down in our chest because we're on our phones or computers a lot, right? So if we already have a little forward head and we're tight in the front of our neck and our pecs, and then we're constantly all day long, like, oh, shoulders back, but our head is still going forward.
Mm.
All it's doing is creating more tension in our neck, right? So what you actually should do instead is just let your shoulders hang out. Just let your shoulders be, and just lift through your
Lift what?
ribcage, lift your sternum, lift to the top of your head. Your mid back will start to work more, and your shoulders and your neck in time will start to relax. We are way too tense in those traps and in the big muscle here that's in the front of your neck.
So yeah, for everyone listening, check out our YouTube channel to watch that video. It was pretty enlightening to actually see that acted out.
Right,
I
yeah.
appreciate that.
Yeah. So the rolling the shoulders, I know it's a hard habit for a lot of people to stop. And it's like, if you do it once in a while, fine. But I just see when people do it on a regular basis, it actually makes things tighter. I know it sounds crazy, but I will tell you today, I always am telling people when they find me, when they start one of my programs, I'm like, you need to come in with a mindset of like, you are learning all sorts of new things about your body and about movement, because I am going to teach you the 180 of so much of what you've learned. And here's the thing, is that why it is. So I remember years ago when I was switching my personal training certification. I was taking one of the top ones. I won't name it, but it's one of the top personal training certifications out there. And I was like, oh, do I need to review this? The guy was like, yeah, you should just review like our style so you can, for our training. I was like, okay, great. So I was going through their core section and I just had this light bulb moment. And I was like, this is why there is so much dysfunction coming out of fitness, because they are teaching the exact opposite of core training of what I'm teaching. So we are
Yeah.
actually creating a lot of the core dysfunction. And again, it happened, a lot of moms, and during pregnancy and all that, it shows up because they don't know how to strengthen their core, because the techniques we've been teaching in fitness, they don't work, especially for pregnant. They don't work for anybody, in my opinion, but they really, really can do a lot of damage during pregnancy.
So that, yeah, and I want to. So you're talking about the core, and I know you have a lot of programs. Anyone who just listened to the intro that I read for you,
I'm a creative. I like teaching.
You have a ton of content, but I was hoping you could, and I think this is a good segue for it, right? Tell me a little bit about the core rehab program in particular.
Yeah.
What is it? Why did you create it? It sounds like it approaches this topic from a pretty unique perspective.
It does. Yeah. So it is all about movement, but there's a lot of education in there as well. And of course, some of the other wellness topics we kind of talked about at the very beginning. But Core Rehab is my signature program. I created it because when I moved back here to the Midwest, almost 8 years ago now, I obviously got a whole new influx of new clients. And I was working with so many moms, like pretty young, like late 20s, early 30s, coming to me with pelvic floor problems, the diastasis, the pain, all this stuff. And I'm like, and they're being told in the medical world, surgery, or you have to suck it up and just deal with it. And I'm like, what? I was just blown away. And so in one session of working with her, I not only had her feeling a little bit better, but I had her seeing that, oh, wow, there was so much more possibility for her body than anyone else she had ever been to ever gave her. They just left her in tears. And so I was like, well, I teach this stuff all the time. I've been teaching this stuff for years. I was like, I need to teach this to women. So that was when I got on it. I was like, I created this program. We have over 100 videos in there.
Wow.
It's crazy. I am a creative. I love teaching, like I said. So it really takes women. And like I kind of already said, it really, you got to go in it with, hey, I'm going to learn so much new about my body and about movement. And when you go about it that way, it is amazing what transforms. Like it not only helps women get rid of pain, but it literally can change their life. Like it is just, it makes me so excited. So that is my main signature program. It's for, moms, whether you're 6 weeks postpartum or 6 years postpartum, or you're in your 60s. Like I have moms that take it and they're like, hey, my mom needs this program. Can she do it? I'm like, yes, absolutely. It's also for women who are planning to get pregnant one day, and they can get a jump start on learning so much about their body. Even if you don't have pain, I love when women can get in and do it as a prevention, because it just can amplify all their other workouts that they're doing. So yeah, that's my main one. And then I have my Knocked Up Fitness program, which is for obviously when she's pregnant. So
yeah. So we'll have a link to the Core Rehab program in the show notes, as well as your free pelvic floor guide. Mm-hmm. Beyond those, are there other platforms where you'd like our listeners to connect with you?
Well, I have my Core Connections podcast, which we talk about a lot of things, a lot of movement, pelvic floor, a lot of pelvic floor conversations over there, a lot of digestion conversations, a lot of wellness topics for women. So
and EMF.
Yes, and we have EMF conversation. Well, it's a wellness topic. It is.
Yeah, no,
so,
super,
it all matters.
So,
yeah. No, you're doing some great work, so I appreciate it.
Well, Erica, I learned, I'm actually a little bit embarrassed to admit how much I learned on today's podcast with this interview, but this was really fantastic. And I want to thank you for taking the time to come join us here at Healthier Tech.
Yeah, absolutely. This was wonderful. I learned a great deal about my body, and I know our listeners are going to love it. So thank you so much for coming on today.
Thank you both so much, R and Stephanie. This was so great to chat with both of you.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Healthier Tech Podcast. Remember to check the show notes for all the links and resources mentioned in the show. Please like and subscribe to the Healthier Tech Podcast on Apple, Spotify, or your podcast platform of choice. Get your free quick start guide to building a healthier relationship with technology and our latest information at healthiertech.co.